26th of December, 2004. Tourists relax on the beaches around the Indian Ocean. In just 3 hours, the lives of hundreds of thousands of people will be wiped out.
Get inside, get inside.
By the deadliest tsunami ever seen. It's this disaster that tsunami expert Jose Barrero has selected for the top 10.
I'm here in Banda Aceh, Sumatra, the northern tip of Sumatra Island facing into the Indian Ocean. This place in particular suffered one of the worst tsunami disasters in human history.
The Indian Ocean, bordered by Asia, Africa, and Australia. In December 2004, millions are enjoying the holiday season along its shores, including Steve Gill, his wife Heather, and stepdaughter Charlotte, who are on vacation in Thailand.
We had arranged to go out for a traditional Christmas meal. Everything was new and warm and fairly unspoiled, undeveloped, very, very quiet. Idyllic, I guess you'd say, yeah.
In the Indonesian town of Banda Aceh, local resident Eddie Quenslow is visiting friends and family.
I went to the town, sleep in my friend's house. There is close between my sister's house and my friend's house.
At about 8 a.m. local time on December 26, 2004, everything changed. Just offshore from here, where the Indo-Australian plate subducts underneath the Eurasian plate, more than 1,000 years of tectonic stress were released in a matter of seconds.
The earthquake has a magnitude of 9.1, the third largest ever recorded. As the Eurasian plate thrusts upwards by 20 meters, it displaces billions of tons of water.
The resulting wave traveled east towards Thailand and Indonesia and west towards India and Sri Lanka. And in the tsunami's path were millions of people.
Peaking at 800 kilometers an hour, the tsunami will take 30 minutes to hit the Sumatran coast. Around an hour later, it will reach Thailand. Although they felt the earthquake, with no tsunami warning systems in place, people around the Indian Ocean coastline are oblivious to the approaching threat.
I saw the building is destroyed, and we are scared, of course, but we didn't know it's tsunami, it's happened.
For the holidaymakers in Thailand, the first hint of the impending disaster is the strange sight of the ocean disappearing.
The bay was empty. All I could see was rocks, all the way over to the yacht club, all the way over to the other island. There's nothing there.
One of the more enduring and dramatic images of the 2004 tsunami was the withdrawal of the water level from the shoreline, leaving the entire foreshore area exposed. This is a phenomenon known as drawdown, and it's caused by the tectonic displacements offshore. While one section of the plate is thrust upwards, the section of the plate closer to the coastline actually subsides, and the water rushing in to fill that void is what causes the withdrawal of the shoreline. Had more people realized that this was the sign of an impending tsunami, perhaps more lives would have been saved.
This is the time people should have started running. But instead, the curious sight lures people onto the beach.
It was bizarre, but it was fascinating. I think I did actually briefly go to the front of the house again and look and think about, walking out. And I thought, no, that's just not right. It's wrong. Exactly how it's wrong, I don't know, but it's wrong.
By the time many react, it's too late.
Myself, my wife, and my stepdaughter discussed our next move, and we just didn't get to make it, basically.
At 8:15 a.m., the tsunami hits northern Sumatra. The city of Banda Aceh, home to over 250,000 people, is about to suffer its full force.
I'm here in the busy city center of Banda Aceh, and it was here on this street corner where some of the most graphic video footage of the tsunami was recorded. On the street behind me, the tsunami surge came flowing up the road, channeled between the buildings. Watching the footage, we see that the leading edge of the tsunami was actually slow enough that people could escape simply by running or walking. However, this part of Banda Aceh is very far from the ocean, and people simply didn't know what to do. As the flood depth increases, so too does the speed of the flow, until there's no way to escape unless you can get to high ground. That's what the person who shot this video did. He climbed up over here. And he lived. However, thousands of other people that day could not get to high ground, and they ended up dying in the waves.
Crammed with billions of tons of debris, the wave is an unstoppable battering ram. Eddie Quenslow is one of the many that scrambled to safety near the Grand Mosque.
Materials come like the iron, the stone, the rocks, the bed, shirt, motorcycle, a car. You can see people mixed with the water, everything material.
The tsunami wave came right through here. These are very sturdy concrete buildings, and many of them weren't knocked over by the tsunami, but rather the water flowed through them, between them, and actually channelized the flow and made it speed up and get deeper in some areas. The water here didn't go past the first story. It was all pretty much less than about 8 or 10 feet deep. So in terms of escaping, a lot of people could have gotten away just by getting up to the second story, as the cameraman did at the corner.
I was thinking I will die, and I saw many people need help, but I could not help because too many people need help. I saw many babies. Of course they need help. Sometimes I just put on the top because I don't know where I have to bring them, how I can bring them to where, because all is a flood. That means everywhere is water.
30 minutes after the tsunami hits Banda Aceh, it smashes into the Thai island of Phuket.
Get inside, get inside.
Steve Gill's beach bungalow is directly in its path.
I think our conversation ended when we heard the roar of the water. We still couldn't see the wave until we turned to look at the small alleyway between the two buildings. It was traveling at a speed estimated between 200 and 300 miles an hour. And it was just, the scene was obliterated by water. It was 30 foot high. And by that time, there was nothing we could do, nothing. I remember being struck by the water. Realistically, there wasn't any expectation of ever coming out the other side. It was just, is this the way it ends? Because the sheer power of what has hit you doesn't allow any space for an escape plan. There are no plans for the future. I was found in the stagnant wreckage, if you like, about a quarter of a mile up the road.
Although he soon reunites with his stepdaughter, Steve is never to see his wife alive again. Over the next 20 minutes, 3 massive waves, up to 10 meters high, crash into the small resort. 1,000 tons of water smashing down on each meter of coastline. Beach after beach, wave after wave, the tsunami brings death and destruction. In Thailand, over 5,000 people perish, with another 3,000 missing. In Indonesia, the tsunami obliterates Banda Aceh.
I could not imagine why like this I lose my best friend. I was thinking like, why God didn't take me? Better He take me than my best friend. And also about my auntie also. We didn't find his bodies. My cousin, many my cousin passed away. We cannot find bodies.
In total, the waves strike 14 countries around the Indian Ocean, taking lives as far away as Africa. The final death toll will make the 2004 tsunami the most lethal ever seen. A decade on, and the streets of Banda Aceh are as busy as ever. And lessons have been learnt. Buildings like this one have been constructed throughout the area to provide safe refuge should another killer wave strike. For Jose Barrero, they're a powerful reminder of why he regards this disaster as one of the worst ever.
The combination of the exceptionally large earthquake and the tsunami, which caused such a devastating human toll over so many countries, makes the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami one of the top 10 natural disasters in human history.
The year is 1348. All around the world, people fall victim to a strange disease. So many die, it pushes the Earth's population towards the brink of collapse. It's an age-old killer that even today can attack without warning.
I could not move a finger, I could not eat, I could not drink, I could move my eyeballs, and I could blink.
Historian Susanna Lipscomb has chosen the apocalyptic calamity of the Black Death as our final top 10 natural disaster.
The year is 1348. One of the most extraordinary, and for historians like me, one of the most fascinating episodes of world history is starting to unfold. Word is spreading across medieval Europe that people are dying of a strange pestilence. Having reached the banks of England, it's headed for London, and there's nothing that London's teeming population can do to stop it.
Strange black lumps appear on the victims' necks and groins, called buboes. The reason it's called the bubonic plague. Within 10 days of developing the symptoms, over half of those infected die an agonizing death. But the bubonic plague is not a disease consigned to history. As John Tull discovers when he develops strange symptoms while on vacation in New York.
We took a cab to the travel doctor's office. I was so sick by that point that I could not sit in a chair in his waiting room, and I laid down on the floor. And he took one look and said, "You have the bubonic plague."
With his condition rapidly deteriorating, John and his wife Lucinda are rushed into hospital.
By this time, I was totally out of it, and they suggested that they put me in a medically induced coma. Lucinda and I talked about it a little bit. We thought it might be 1 or 2, 3 days. Well, it turned out to be 90 days.
Within 2 days of his going into this coma, his extremities started turning black, his hands and his feet.
Today, in the West, the chances of catching the so-called Black Death are slim. But in the 14th century, conditions are primed for the plague to spread like wildfire.
The world population had dramatically expanded over the previous centuries. London had gone from a population of 15,000 in the 12th century to 80,000 in the 1300s, all hemmed in between the river and the old Roman walls. London was more densely populated than it had ever been. Perfect conditions for an epidemic to flourish.
The squalor is extraordinary. With no sewage system, human and animal waste runs down the streets like a river. Yet despite the filth, medieval London's a thriving centre of international commerce, as it is today.
This might look quintessentially modern, but trading has been going on in London since medieval times. The city was packed with people. It was a commercial hub. Driven by the demands for silks and spices, international trade flourished. London was overrun with exotic imports and people from around the world. And as well as goods and people, London was being filled with something it didn't want that had been brought to England's shores.
The international trade opens the door to a new foreign visitor. Asian black rats, who thrive in London's dirty streets. And on the back of these rats are fleas we now know carry the plague bacteria, Yersinia pestis, in their stomachs. But in the 14th century, with no understanding of how the Black Death is spread, the people are defenseless to its invisible threat.
And so when the disease did arrive, it ripped through this densely packed population and did immense damage.
Although uncommon, rats carrying plague-infected fleas are still found in some parts of the US.
We live on 5 acres and it's in the country. And we have thousands probably of rodents just on our 5 acres. And maybe a third of them have the plague.
All it takes is one bite from an infected flea. And John's immune system can do little to stop the plague bacteria from spreading. While John is still in his coma, Lucinda is forced to make a life or death decision.
Well, Lucinda woke me up on January 14th or 15th, and she said, honey, I love you. It's January 15th, and your legs have been amputated.
If I had not given permission for that, I don't think John would have lived. And I was determined that I would do everything within my power to see that he would live. So painful, difficult, horrible as it was, I made that decision and gave them permission to do amputations.
Although science has done much to combat the plague, as John Tull shows, it can still strike with horrendous effect. In 14th century Europe, all they can do is bury their dead. Excavated plague pits in London give a terrifying indication of just how fast the disease kills when it enters a city's walls.
So Yelena, this is actually the skeleton of a 14th century plague victim.
It is, yes. This is a female and she was found from East Smithfield Catastrophe Cemetery.
I'm guessing that she was one of many.
Yes, from that site we curate over 600, but they believe that there were several thousand that would have actually been buried there. So yes, high numbers of people dying very quickly.
In England, over a quarter of the entire population succumbs to the Black Death.
When this huge number of people died, how did they cope with all the corpses?
You might think with a catastrophe that you're just going to get these great big open pits and everyone's just going to be flung in rather randomly. But the interesting thing about East Smithfield is that people are actually being placed in a very nice, neat, ordered manner. They're trying to sort of follow the process of a Christian burial, so they're sort of trying to keep some sort of degree of normality around, you know, this sort of awful epicenter of this catastrophe.
By the time the Black Death finally retreats, it's killed 1 in 3 of Europe's population, equivalent to over 240 million today. The death toll, the cost, and the legacy of this disaster have no equal.
The Black Death was the most profound disaster that humankind has ever known. Its symptoms were horrifying and degrading. It brought fear and humiliation. It was sudden and lethal. It was the ultimate pandemic and the worst natural disaster that humankind has ever experienced. It's little wonder that we remember it with horror 700 years later.
The top 10 natural disasters share little in common. They are meteorological, biological, geological. They've struck every continent and caused unimaginable horror. Nowhere and no one is safe. And yet, we are still here. We are the survivors, members of a uniquely adaptable species. Now we need to heed the warnings of history and prepare for future disasters. Because they will strike again.